Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let me take this opportunity to welcome you all to Digital Excellence Pharma Academy. This is a unique project and initiative brought to you by Medicine Man and Credo Web combined. As you're already aware that each Friday, 5 p.m., we bring to you a webinar, which is, we believe, is a topic which might interest a large number of our audience. And during the following week, you have an opportunity to share your own experiences, your own learnings. And if you have a question, possibly can you raise that? This is possibly the best way where collectively we all learn from each other's experience. Before we start, let me take a pause and share my screen with you. Hope you can see my screen now. So this week we are going to talk about strategically manage customer relationship a better way. Before I go further, let me take a pause and introduce myself. My name is Deep Bhandari. I'm passionate about developing leaders by focusing on potential and their strength rather than the limitation. I've been around over 3 decades, largely with two companies, Novartis for a number of years in various positions of increasing responsibility, and UCB. You wish you can connect with me, my credentials are given. Okay, let's now start looking at that, what we can do in this area. Before we go further, let's revisit the basics. We all know that the customer loyalty is the only true indicator of future success of growth in the organization. All other initiatives, whatever we talk about in terms of the marketing and the sales initiatives, if the customer don't value those initiatives, possibly that we will not able to sustain the growth for the long period of time. Customer loyalty is the only way possibly that we can sustain a growth for the longer period of time. Uh, my discussion with the various business leaders, almost third of the business leader shown a growing dissatisfaction with their current customer relationship management initiative. And most of the time, the whether we talk about the technological limitation or the slow adoption by the field, or possibly that the data integration and things like that, there could be many reasons. But I guess that the fundamentally that what I believe is that we look at those systems with a very narrow standpoint. And what I mean when I say that narrow standpoint, uh, we are only looking at the fixing the matrix or data, and not really that the insights which might help us build the customer loyalty. Let's build on this little further. But before that, uh, let, let's look at a very broader picture and try and understand that what is the genesis of this issue that what we are facing with regard to customer loyalty. Most of the time, I start my discussion with the business leader by asking them a very simple question. How do you know when you have a successful sales organization? And as expected, most of the leader answers in a very simple term that they are doing better than others in terms of sales, sales growth, market share, their profitability and cost in line with the industry standard and things like that, and rightfully so. Why? Because most of the business leaders are evaluated on these parameters. These are the hallmark of success for them. So obviously, take a moment and think about this. These are all based on what has already happened in the past history. Are these indicators a predictor of future success? And when you provoke them, you actually that get the right answers. They say that we have a deep customer relationship and the customer trust. We have high customer retention and low defection, or a loyal customer base. Now, if we really look at these are more reliable predictor of future success of the organization. How often in our matrix we see this as the driving parameter? Most of our CRM system provides us the dashboards and things like that, which is more in terms of the performance, but then hardly in terms of that how we are building on customer relationship. And this is possibly one of the reason why our focus gets little derailed as far as building the customer loyalty is concerned. Let's uh, uh, let's look at this concept from the eyes of most of the management thinker, Peter Drucker, which decades back said the purpose of business is to create and keep a customer. Unfortunately, many decades back when I started my career, I heard leaders saying, we are in a business of prescription generation. Nothing wrong with that. Only thing is that interpretation of prescription generation is often very transactional thing. Let's consider a smartly dressed medical rep goes to a doctor and talk about the features and benefits of their pharmaceutical brand or his pharmaceutical brand. And let's also assume the doctor listened to him and prescribe his drug to the next patient. Now, this is a very successful sales pitch if that happens that way. Now, this has been the scenario for a long time. Is it relevant now? Things have changed quite a bit. And one thing has changed is that no longer customers or the physicians are looking for rep for information. They have plenty of other sources, more flexible, at ease, and they are much more savvier in terms of technology is concerned. So the rep role has undergone a tremendous change. Unfortunately, many of today's pharma leader, we still are in business of prescription generation. And that's where possibly that we are looking at very narrowly what we talk about transactional selling. So we are creating value for the customer, but those values are not really sustainable. Those were because the principle of value creation is not something that adds value to the customer. It's only that giving them some value. And if it is frictionless, they get results, they get growth, and they're happy with that. But will this growth will be sustainable for a long period of time? Not. At what cost? And profitability. Because each time to get or drive the similar growth, possibly that you need to spend much more. Why? Because everybody is doing same thing. There are other ways in some companies that they start looking at possibly the business solution. Unfortunately, there are not many successful examples where we talk about that the business solution. The reason is that for many of areas we have plenty of what we call it alternatives. Let's look at that. The last December, Vildagliptin was off patent. And today we have as many as 150 brands of Vildagliptin. coming to market. In this, possibly that providing the business solution becomes a rather difficult, and most of people in terms of the customer feel they have unclear value proposition. And so the win rates are really low in this. So what do we do? How do we move forward in building customer loyalty and successful selling? And that's where that some organizations are looking at being a trusted advisor to the customer. And if you have a really smart and well-skilled sales force, then possibly that what we call it challenger sales or inside selling. Let's spend a little bit of time and look at that what it is. Now, otherwise this will be a sheer simple word. Let me give you an example. What I mean by trusted advisor. I've been fortunate enough to work with many such people, those who have created a unique space in customers' mind as a trusted advisor. Let me give you one example which is very close to my heart. I had opportunity to working with a rep who has been tremendously successful in this area. And this is not an isolated example, but look at that the example very carefully. So this person was calling on a very reputed and very senior neurophysician for a number of months, and he never used to allow him more than few seconds. Never allowed him to possibly take the discussion further in terms of more areas which might that he would like to talk about and things like that. One day he decided to challenge the physician, and he asked, Doc, do you treat patient with particular disorder? And the doc, he looked at him and he said that, yeah, I have a patient. Come next week, I'll give you a prescription. All right. And next week he came back, and when he entered, he showed him a MRI on the screen and said that this is the patient I'm going to put on this drug. The rep looked at the MRI. He had a little challenge. He took a pause and very respectfully told to the doctor, Doc, this is wonderful. Can I suggest you something? He said, go ahead. He said, Doctor, why don't you call the radiologist? And he looked at him, little surprised. He said, why do you want me to call radiologist? He said that maybe that he will see a little bit more than what our eyes meet in this MRI. And he called the radiologist, and radiologist came, and doctor asked him that, can you diagnose that what it is? The radiologist looked at the lesions, and he said that, doc, possibly this might be the case of a different diagnosis than the doctor's diagnosis. And the doctor was surprised, and the radiologist explained the size of the lesion and the distance of the lesion is this, and that's the reason why he's saying what he's saying. Now the issue is that, do you have examples where the reps are declining their own product sales? And I'm talking about the product sales which could be in few lakhs rupees. Each patient contributes few lakh rupees because that's the right thing to do. Because you believe that the doctor might be making a mistake by putting this patient on your own drug, where that possibly the diagnosis might be different. Now, there are two, three factors which are important. One, how many reps have that kind of skills where possibly they understand these things in a better way? How many people really make an effort or serious effort to train their reps in a way they are in position to challenge or provoke a new thinking in their customers? Second, do you have guts to decline your own sales? That is what makes you a trusted advisor. The trust is a very important factor. Now, you might say this might be an isolated example, but this is not the isolated example. I have seen in many, many cases, and this is not about specialty care. This is also about the primary care. However, in primary care, the issues and challenges might be very different, right? This is where, so how do you really see that your reps are ready to meet the customer's expectations? Now, coming back to the business of prescription generation versus customer centricity. So how much we focus on the customer, or we look at that a transactional way to generate prescription, and that is what that gives us the growth and things like that. Now that's possibly that leaders, those who still believe that we are in the business of prescription generation, move to really transform their thinking by putting patients in the center of everything. And that's where that you will able to realize your true growth. Otherwise, possibly that we will still struggle making the differentiation. Okay, before we go further, let us look at that some of very simple model of strategic management of customer relationship. And what I mean by model is simple way of understanding theoretically that how the entire these things fit into place. And in a simple way, if we explain that if you provide services to your customers and those services which your customer would value, that will lead to a satisfied customer, and group of satisfied customer possibly over a period of time will show their loyalty by possibly that helping you to prescribe your products, and possibly that increasing the profitability of this. Now this looks theoretically very simple. Let's examine a little bit more on details of this aspect. And one of the questions that comes to our mind is that will the higher level of loyalty always lead to profit? But before we answer this question, let's also look at that what loyalty is and what is the higher level of loyalty. Now, for most of us, the loyalty is change in their behavior. Okay, but is always that behavior changes the loyalty? There's another way of loyalty called attitudinal loyalty. So we can explain loyalty by two ways. One, by observing behavior. Another is attitudinal. Now, behavioral loyalty has simply said that based on the observed behavior. And this observed behavior could be anything. For example, physician takes up your products and write it regularly. It's an observed behavior, right? Or physician choose to attend your event more frequently than possibly that your competitors. So these are all observed behavior. So this is the most typical way of assessing loyalty, right? Now the issue is that what is attitudinal loyalty? Attitudinal loyalty is difficult to measure. Why? Because it's based on surveys. I'm sure that many of you heard about that Net Promoter Score or NPS. When you check out from the hotel or airline and they ask you that, would you advocate to others right? And why you advocate to others. And this is what what they are doing is that they are getting your attention on NPS or Net Promoter Score. We will take this concept a little later, but here that you must understand that it's based on survey. So NPS is one way. The other way possibly is that brand equity and various other ways of measuring the attitudinal loyalty. Now, what is the difference between behavior and attitudinal loyalty? Attitudinal loyalty is a stronger predictor of customer profitability. And that's the reason I think that earlier days, the Sajidim used to give us a report on CNS and CVM audit and things like that, and where there that uh, persuasion rates. Now, persuasion rate is something that which are indicator of the future prescription. There's something that which is similar to this. Okay. So what we have learned is that behavior loyalty doesn't always predicts, and possibly is a differences in customer predictability very well, while the attitudinal loyalty is a stronger predictor of customer profitability. Let's look at will the higher level of loyalty will always lead to profits, and why we do so. Now, again, the underlying theory is very simple. The customer more loyal, therefore they have a heavy switching cost, and possibly that maybe we don't have to spend as much money to market to them or serve to them. As a result, they become more profitable. Now, the issue with both this point is that there are a lot of empirical research which suggests that these are very rational thinking, but possibly that this may not be the always cause. For example, let's take the later case. Uh, a customer who's loyal to you, or he's a heavy prescriber of your product, he also knows the power he has, and hence possibly that he has a power to demand more from you. So it's not always true that a loyal customer will always be profitable. But then largely that this is what that we believe it's true. Uh, Look at that. Let's go to little upstream and look at that. Does the satisfaction lead to higher customer loyalty? And look at that, what we call it, reasoning in reverse. So if we increase the level of satisfaction, we have more loyal customers. The data doesn't suggest so, because the companies with the higher market share don't necessarily deliver the highest customer satisfaction, because the higher market share means that you are more mass, you're reaching out to mass, and then to expect a more customer satisfaction becomes much more difficult for them. Let's look at that the beginning, what we said, that if you improve the level of service, will the customer be more satisfied? Now that's where that your strategy comes into the play. Please understand that what we need to be very clear that what you mean by improving service, and more importantly, to whom we are improving service. So we need to revisit that who are our targets. And many times the field people, they get it wrong. What is our positioning, and what does services mean to target group, and how we can improve it? Because services mean different things to different people. For your target group, and what is your positioning, the service means very different. So also the improving on these service would be very different. Please keep this thing in mind, and we will explore or put into practice this into possibly more in a practical way. We try and understand this concept. So let's look at the summary of this. Very simply, what we say that let's say that the services, if we improve services to our target group, we will able to improve the level of satisfaction if we have planned and delivered properly. And this should increase satisfaction. This should lead to what we call it attitudinal loyalty. The company should benefit from loyalty with a greater long-term profit. There are two, three things which are important. Is a plan delivered properly should lead to increased level of satisfaction and attitudinal loyalty. Okay, let's come back on this point, that what we talk about, that we know that the difference in opportunity is massive, and many times it's very difficult for us to practically implement this. Theoretically everyone understands, and that's the reason that we know the top 10% have much more that better opportunity than possibly middle or the bottom 10% of the customers. Okay, now this is a simple 3x3 matrix. This is flexible, we can use it in a many ways, but to me that this is very important when we look at the strategic management of customer relationship and what we mean. So one axis we have market potential. We all know what market potential is, right, for a particular indication. The other axis that we look at the product propensity, or possibly that let's say in simple terms that if we are talking about let us say epilepsy, so the total market for a particular customer, what he can use the anti-epileptic drugs, and how much he's using your own drug, right? So this is where that. Now, if we need to look at where is the biggest opportunity, it's very simple. The top right-hand corner, where that you have the loyal customer. Why we are saying so? Because these are the customer where we have the biggest potential, and they're the people, those who are giving you the highest number of prescription of patients. Now, the issue is with the second best. Now, we'll look at that from the potential. These are the people which offer the biggest opportunity, but they are not loyal to you. They are loyal to your competition. Why? Because the product propensity here is medium and low. The third category is where the potential and propensity both are medium to low. And fourth category is possibly that we have opportunity also low to medium, and the product propensity is also low to medium. So do you have capacity to serve these customers? Or possibly that you say that we choose to ignore that, because you can't serve all the customers. Now, let's look at that when you say that what we can do to fix this issue. Okay, the loyal, you can't treat each one of these customers in a same or similar way. But what you can do is that have a strategy very different for your loyal customer. What are their needs? The loyal customer possibly requires a recognition, right? So we should recognize and respect their loyalty, build further loyalty to your product, try and lock out the competition, and have quality of time. Now, these are all symbolic words when we look at that. What does this mean? But then for a customer, possibly that look at that, what you set out to achieve and how you're going to achieve. Now, issue here is that how much you're going to invest on these customers. And the answer is that possibly that the large number of money should be invested on these customers. Why? Because this is where your current business comes from. This is what that will give you a stability. But you need to be very careful and you watch that, are you growing this quadrant? Or are you shrinking this quadrant? And which would be the indicator of that? And we will tell you that how do you measure that? What is your second priority? The second priority is that where you have another opportunity or the biggest opportunity, but then the customers are possibly loyal to your competition. And what you can do with them, your strategy is that they are not convinced with you. Possibly you do not have access to them. And that's where that you need to generate the access to solution. Possibly that generate, look at that, what you can do, what services they need, maybe that more time with them. And that's what that, whether it is in terms of face-to-face calls or digitally enabled engagement and things like that. But that's where that you first, before you start really investing on these customers, many times, because looking at the potential and the competitors are very successful in this customer, we try and invest heavily on these customers. This is a mistake to my mind. Unless you get the first thing basic, generate access, the investment on these customers would only give us a transactional value and not the loyalty. Another area possibly that most of the companies go wrong, or most of the salespeople go wrong, is where you have a medium to low potential, both in terms of potential and the propensity. And that's where that we invest disproportionately high amount of resources here, where the right strategy possibly would be to build efficiency, which means that you need to recognize their loyalty, identify the strong advocates, and possibly that try and see that how you can achieve more with less resources. And finally, you have, people, those who have low to medium opportunity in terms of potential as well as propensity. Now, if you have a capacity, you can meet them. If you do not have capacity, possibly try and see that if you can engage them in one way or other without even really looking at in terms of resources. Now, this is a very workable model when we look at that, our strategic customer relationship model put into this, possibly that these two together works very well. Let's shift the gear and look at that. How do we know when customers are loyal to you? Now, this is the CRM system. Any CRM system should give us insights which is 360-degree, which means the company-wide insights. And we should be able to translate or transform this information in a meaningful way where our salespeople are able to implement in their interaction with the customer, whether digitally or face-to-face. Which means what? A CRM system should have all the knowledge, all the touch point across all organization. Now, many companies have multiple divisions, multiple product line, multiple people are interacting with the customer, and we don't know that what we are doing for the customer. Now, how do we know that what we can do in terms of getting those information right in our CRM system? And that's the biggest challenge. Today, the technology is there, whether we talk about the machine learning or artificial intelligence, which can gather these insights very well and simplify into an actionable insight for a salespeople or the marketing to really make best use of those knowledge in order to build customer loyalty. Okay. How do we measure loyalty? And how do we build loyalty? And how do we ensure that a true growth or sustainable growth? The simple answer is by Net Promoter Score. It's one of the ways. And why we say that Net Promoter Score in a minute, that I'll explain. This is a very simple system. So you ask customers, Would you recommend us or our services or our product to a friend or a colleague? On a scale 0 to 10, you need to rate this question. Okay. Now, if the rating is 9 to 10, they are the promoter. If rating is between 0 and 6, they are the detractors. And anything in between, 7 or 8, they are neither here nor there, which means they are undecided. They are not with you, and they are certainly not with the detractors. Now, the difference in scores or these two scores called net promoter score. So each time when you do that, you know that what is your score in terms of who are your promoter and who are your detractors and who are the people who are over a period of time. That when you do that, you know that are you increasing loyalty or not. Let me just take you through a little bit more. Now, these are the 5 questions we ask customers. Okay. The question on scale from 0 to 10, where 0 is not at all likely and 10 is extremely likely, how you like to recommend our company to your colleagues or peer based on your experience with our products, employees, and services, right? And then you ask that, please provide us the most important reason why you gave this score. Please think about the positive experience with our product, employees, and services, which aspect and our present collaboration really stand out from your perspective. And again, that you ask, based on your experience with our products, employee, and services, what and how you could change in order to increase the likelihood that you recommend us to your colleague or peers. And then finally, you ask whether you would like to, that discuss with us more details or not. So you take a consent from them and their phone number and things like that. Now, very simple, these 5 questions. Let me take you the whole cycle. So when you look at that customer engagement, you prepare and conduct what I told you, those 5 questions. Collect the customer feedback. Look at that, the responses. So 1, you get the NPS score, the first question. The second, third, and fourth question, you get why, the reasons, the rationale. Now you put those rationales into different clusters. For example, that about the product, what they feel about the product, what they feel about services, what they feel about marketing, what they feel about salespeople, what they feel about the other things, and they put those clusters and things like that, right? And that's a very valuable information for you. Now you can reach out based on that. You have a collective, what we say that the customer dialogue. Now that's the basis of initiating a customer dialogue. That's the basis of making a change in your strategy and try and see that what you can change in your marketing, the sales efforts, and possibly that gives you a way that if you need to upskill your people, what way you can upskill and where you can upskill. If you need to change your marketing, possibly that what you can do. This is something that gives you enormous insight in terms of initiating the right action to build the customer loyalty. What I'll do, I'll stop here, and possibly that we will request you, please share with us the following week your own experiences. If you have any question regarding these things, please feel free to ask. We would welcome your comment, we'll welcome your question, we'll welcome you share your experience, and that's how that we would like to collectively learn from each other experience. Thank you very much and have a nice evening ahead. Thank you very much.